Hello, we're going to do a larger build today. This is the Fluval Venezia 190 litre corner tank. It's got an inlet and outlet supplied with it, which is secured via a bulkhead through the unit itself. And it comes with a Fluval heater, which we've just tucked at the back here so that it can be hidden as best as possible. This tank is not actually in production anymore, although you will find some supplies online, but Fluval no longer make this version and we just managed to get one of the last from our fish supplier. It comes with a cabinet that has 2 pockets. This is one with a series of shelves in it for all your products. And the other side is where the filter is stored. So this is a little external filter which is then secured through the unit itself via the tubing. We've secured an extension cable to this inside at the top so that the wires are kept out of the way for any water changes. Putting in some aqua soil here. This is the Fluval stratum, and I've got some large soil bags to cover the bottom of the tank, as we're going to do a heavily planted tank like most of the others. And then some fine gravel to just bulk it up at the back. Ideally I could have had a little bit more gravel, but this will do. We're going to cap it with sand anyway, so this just gives it a little bit of a height. So we're using dragonstone for this one. I wanted to give a form of kind of mountainous appearance, a little bit like the Howlong Bay. So we've got some larger pieces here that are going to be the basis of the scape. So just keep playing with them. As you can see, I keep fiddling about with things, trying to block the inlet and outlet as best as possible from the main viewpoint of the tank. So dragonstone is quite a dirty material. It's covered in dirt, so these have been taken outside and scrubbed. And we're just putting the sand in as the top of the substrate to give it a nice clean look. Gives a nice beachy appearance. It's just easier in this circumstance to just move it about with your hand to just tuck it behind all the rocks. Again, a final play with the dragonstone, just trying to find the right viewpoint. And I've just taken a bit of dragonstone that I'm scattering around the edges to make it a little bit more natural. So these are API root tabs. They are kind of nutrient capsules. So I've broken them up into little pieces here and I will push them down into the sand. Ideally I would have done this before I put the capping on, but yet again I forgot. So just scattering the pieces around evenly and then it can be pushed down into the substrate. So to make it look a bit more natural and like the plant roots are coming down over the rock, I'm just sticking a few bits of spiderwood onto the rocks here, using a little bit of the superglue gel. It's cyanoacrylate superglue. You can use pretty much any version because they're all the same, but this is one that was actually got from the fish store. And you can see this time I've remembered to wear gloves so that I don't stick it all over my fingers, which is what usually happens. And here we have the plant selection. So I've got a couple of in vitro pots. I've got some Caryptocorini Winty Brown and some Sagittarius subulata, which is dwarf sag, and a different type of crypt parva here. Both of the crypts will keep quite small. Then I've got a few epiphytes, Nubius nana bonsai, which is a smaller variety, Bucephalandra green velvet, Bucephalandra lamandau, which is a more reddy one, and Schistomeglossus praetoi, I think it's called, which is similar to the Anubias and the Bus. You can see that the Bus has got raggedy edges to the leaves, whereas the Nubius has got rounded leaves, but it will give a nice variety of texture. Then we've got Hygrophila pinnafatida. I've struggled with this planted, so I'm going to try it as an epiphyte this time. And we've got some Pagostemon erectus here, which is a nice quick growing stem. And this, I believe, is a Ludwigia. It's either a glandulus or a Reuben, which is a larger form of this Palustris mini super red here. And this is Ceratopterus thylacetoides. I've never used this one before, but I like the shape of the leaves and it should provide some nice cover for the fish. So popping the stems in first, the bigger plants where possible towards the back. And while you won't be able to see these plants from the front of the tank, a lot of the viewing is done from the right hand side, which is where the sofa in the living room is. So even those that are hidden from the front you should be able to see from the sides. The quick growing stems will help take a lot of the nutrients out of the tank and allow it to balance quickly. As you can see, I've managed to get a few pieces out of the one pot, so it's quite nice because it allows you to spread them around a bit. So this plant I popped in the centre because I did like to use it as a feature plant, but within about a week it grew very large, so I did actually move it to the side once the water was in. The mini super red will need quite a reasonable amount of light, so I've tried to put it in places that will actually accept most light from the light that's supplied with the Fluval. And so these are the main stems. This is the super red, so that will go redder the more light it gets. And the Ceratopterus is just a lovely contrast to the rest of the leaves in the tank. So as I mentioned, Pinnafatida I've not had much luck with planted, so I'm going to try it as an immersed plant because it can work that way. So we are just gluing the stem to the tops of the rocks to make it look a little bit like there are trees coming out the tops. This leaves the roots exposed to the water so that they can absorb some of the nutrients from the water. And so now for the epiphytes. So I'm tucking some into crevices where I can. So we've got a couple of the more reddy ones and then interspersed with the more green ones. And those that won't tuck into crevices, I'm just sticking the rhizome down onto the rock with some super glue. As long as you don't stick the roots, then it will be quite happy. So just splitting this one into two so that we can put a little bit here and a little bit elsewhere. the last of the plants are the smaller stems, so the cryptocorynes can actually last with a little less light, so I'm tucking these down at the edge of the rocks, and then the sage will spread better if it's got more light, so I'm just bringing the dwarf sage into the foreground a little bit in the hopes that it will send its runners out and spread a little around the bottom of the tank. So now for the fill. This took place over probably about 3 hours, and just spraying every now and again to keep the plants hydrated so that they don't dry out. So as you can see, the water's a bit misty at the moment. I've just turned on the filter. I've put some biological media in it and have sat it on its own for a week. So we now pop in the tap water conditioner, which takes any of the hard metals out of the water, like chlorine. With a large tank, there's a few capful of these that go in. And you can see the water's a little bit misty at the moment. That's because of the dirt that's kicked up from the sand and the stone, but the filter should take care of that. In the meantime, we're going to pop some crystal clear in. This works really well if you've got some filter floss in your filter. And what this does is it clumps together any particles that are in the water, which helps it get picked up through the filter. It does make the water very misty to begin with as it's clumping the particles, so you'll see in a minute that it actually doesn't improve the initial mistiness of the water, but after a few hours it clears right up. Here we go. This is the tank after it's settled. So it's been running now for a couple of weeks, and you can see that the Ceratopterus has been moved to the edges because it's grown by about 3 or 4 inches within that time. Doing a water test, it was pretty stable, so we popped in some of the small cherry shrimp from the other tank. We went through a bit of an ugly stage with a load of algae, so putting in the shrimp actually helped with breaking down that algae. It's the first time I've got hair algae as the tank has been cycling, but within about a day of the shrimp being in, the algae was pretty much gone in most places. So here you can see the cherry shrimp just picking at the algae. The pinna foetida was particularly covered, and you can only see fine granules of the algae left. It was covered in hair algae, but they've done a really good job of clearing that up. And we added some Amazon frogbit, red root floaters and some snails to help out. So the next lot in are the Armano shrimps. So these are good at picking off quite long algae and cyanobacteria, so they're quite useful to have on top of the cherry shrimp. And it does mean that if we get some larger fish in here, they're less likely to be picked off than the cherry shrimp. So these have been acclimatising to the water temperature in the bag for about half an hour. Unlike cherry shrimp, I found that they're actually quite happy going straight into the tank. I've never had to drip acclimatise Armano shrimp. Cherry shrimp, very much so. You do get a lot of deaths if you don't drip acclimatise them, I find, but the Armanos are pretty hardy little creatures and I've never had to drip acclimatise them. meant to make a point earlier that this is about 3 weeks into the build of the tank. So it's settled down, all the water parameters are fine, there's no ammonia and no nitrates. These are black phantom tetras. They're quite pale at the moment, so they've obviously been a little bit stressed. So we've got 18 of these going in. They do actually prefer heavily planted tanks. You need to give them a place to hide, although they also need to have a bit of open water to swim around. Obviously at the moment they're a little bit nervous. And these are the feature fish. So we've decided on some rainbow fish, and these are juvenile painted rainbow fish. So they haven't really coloured up at the moment. We believe there are 2 males and 3 females. The males will get slightly rounder than the females, who will keep more of a torpedo shape. And they will get lovely blue coloration, with the males getting orange on their fins. And they're pretty chill for having first gone in the tank. Anyway, we do plan to add some more fish into the tank. We're going to leave it another week and add in some more bottom feeders, a bit of a clean-up crew, plus another fish to keep the tetras and the rainbow fish company. But we just want it to settle in for a little bit longer before we do so. And the one thing that I didn't mention, we did put some beneficial bacteria in as soon as the livestock went into the tank, and that's recommended for every time you put livestock into the tank, which just helps break down any ammonia and nitrates in the water. We're testing the waters every day just to make sure that the parameters are still stable, and doing water changes where we need to. The phantom tetras have a very clear sexual dimorphism, so you can tell which are the males and which are the females quite obviously. The males have black fins beneath their body, and the females have red fins. So we'll just leave you with this last bit of video. Thank you for watching. Please do like and subscribe, and we'll see you again next time.